All right, hello, and most likely, if you're watching this, you have recently signed up for lessons, either doing Skype or video correspondence, so thank you very much for that. This video is going to go over how I want you to practice, how we're going to go about approaching material that's given to you, and there's going to be slight variations for Skype students versus video correspondence, but the general idea is the same. So, when you get your stuff, you're going to have at the top of the Guitar Pro file or PDF. And if you don't have Guitar Pro, I highly recommend you get it. It is a very useful tool. And when we get to really difficult things, it could very much make practicing much easier. So anyway, you should have received an ebook called Mile High Shred Metronome Method. If not, it may... either I forgot to attach it to an email, or maybe I forgot to attach it to your invoice for the initial, for the first month. So just let me know if you can't find it. I'll definitely send it again. But the method laid out in that ebook is basically how we're going to approach things. We're going to start nearly everything at 60 beats per minute. You're going to play the exercise given to you correctly one time, just once, and then you go up 5 beats per minute. Now, when you start practicing stuff, common mistakes is people will play things more than once before increasing the speed. We don't want to do that. There will be moments where we do have repetitions, but for the most part, you won't be doing that. Most of the things that I give students, it will say something like, work this up without the repeat after a certain amount of time, add in repetitions and so on, much like it says on the screen right now. So this is one student's example. Typically, if it's a Skype lesson, we have 2 or 3 things we work on each week in terms of like exercise-based stuff. Video correspondence, usually it's just one thing to work on each week. However, if you have 2 or 3 things via video correspondence, your time limits will also be different. So the amount of time to spend on each thing will always be at the top of your page. So if we change it for whatever reason, you'll know about it. But basically, just as an example here, like this person's exercise says spend 10 minutes working this up as fast as you can. So we're going to do that without the repeats first. So that's basically how everyone's stuff's going to go. If you see repeat signs, most likely you're going to do it without the repetitions first, and you add in the repeats later. Now, you play through this whole thing one time with the metronome at 60. When you play it correctly, and what I mean by correct is, did it sound good enough to be on your album? So when you're practicing, you have to keep in mind that you're doing so as if you are recording, because we can't let mistakes happen, or I should say, we can't allow mistakes to sit, because mistakes are going to happen. It's what you do with those mistakes that is important. So if you hear things ringing out we don't want, such as additional open strings, we need to fix that right away. If you notice that your timing was off on something, we need to fix that right away. I'll talk more about that in a bit. But the general idea is you play the example you have correctly, album-worthy correctly, just one time, and then go up 5 beats per minute. So you start off at 60, you play it correctly once, you move it up to 5, or to 65 beats per minute, play it again, bump it up to 70, play it again. So just keep going up in 5 beat per minute increments until you either reach the given time limit, which is usually 10 minutes for Skype students, 15 minutes for a lot of video correspondence students. Remember, it will say your time limit on your files. So once you have reached that time limit, whatever speed you are currently trying to reach at that time limit, get that speed, and then you're not going to continue increasing the speed anymore. So let's say, for example, you're working on something and you have that your time limit is reached. So you don't want to stop right there. You want one more good take. So get one more good take after you've reached that time limit. So for example, let's say your time limit is reached while you are still trying to hit 200 beats per minute. and you get your 200 beats per minute after that. So then what you do, as it says up here, once you have reached the time limit, in this case, for this example, 10 minutes, you're going to add in the repeat. And then you're going to try working up to 4 repetitions. So basically, for something like this, you would, after that time limit is reached, so you have the 200 beats per minute right after that time limit, then you play through this whole thing twice at the same speed. If you cannot play 2 times through at that speed, drop the metronome 10 beats per minute and try it again. So after like 3 attempts, and it's just like, yeah, there's no way it's going to happen at that speed, drop it down 10 beats per minute and try it again. Keep doing that until you can reach 4 repetitions. So make sure you can get 2 repeats first, then 3 repetitions, and then 4. Just keep decreasing that metronome as much as you need to in order to make those repetitions happen. So we spend the first part of the exercise or example getting it as fast as we can, focusing on accuracy, and accuracy is the most important part. Focus on the accuracy, not the speed. Speed is just a byproduct of playing accurately at slightly faster and faster and faster tempos. Because if you sacrifice accuracy just to be able to say you hit a certain number, you didn't actually hit that number. Either it's good enough to be on your album, or it's not good at all. It's basically yes or no kind of thing. Perfect practice makes perfect. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So that's why if mistakes happen, and they're going to, so when mistakes happen, we address them right away and correct what the mistake is before continuing on. So let's talk about that. Let's say you're working on something a bit more complicated like this. And let's say each time you get to that part, the mistake keeps happening. Or even like this guy here. I probably should have brought up a better example. But let's say you reach, all the way to this bar and the mistake happens. And so instead of continuing on thinking that, oh, I should just finish the whole take, you shouldn't. You definitely shouldn't. So if you make a mistake here, do not just finish through the rest of it. Start again. Try it again. If after 3 times the same mistake happens, focus on that spot. Polish that up. So actually, let me just open up another one real quick. Shouldn't take too long here. All right, so let's say something a bit longer, right? So let's say you get to this bar here. You goof something up. Well, just go back to the start and try it again. And then if it happens again a second time, still don't continue on. Don't finish going through it. Start over again. But after 3 times, it happens again, like 3 times in a row. Well, this time you don't want to start all the way over. Stay where the mistake happened and work on polishing that up. Get that to sound perfect. I typically will do like 3 perfect takes of the trouble spot before going back to the beginning. So, for example, you can take that 1 bar where the mistake keeps happening, repeat that 1 bar 3 times perfectly, and then go back to the start. Because if you can do the trouble spot 3 times in a row perfectly, you have a much better chance of going back to the beginning and playing the whole thing through. So, common mistake with this idea of continuing on. It's like people have told me, students have told me, like, oh, well, I thought I was still getting benefit from just finishing it anyway. Or they will do things like repeat the entire exercise over and over and over again until they finally get it right. We don't want to do that because that's not addressing the mistakes. If you allow the mistake to be, then you're training yourself that it's okay to make those mistakes. The only time I find it's really beneficial to continue on when a mistake is made is if you're working on like band practice stuff and you need to play a song and have the song so well known that you can make a mistake like in the middle of the song and then continue on as if a mistake didn't happen. Because when you're on stage, you can't just start all over again. So that's one instance where continuing on when a mistake happens is a good idea. But for the stuff that we do, for the most part, we don't want to do that. Like 99% of the time, unless there's some exception to it, and I will let you know if there's an exception to this. But if a mistake is made, address it right away, because we cannot allow mistakes to be left there. Remember, only perfect practice makes perfect. Practice makes permanent. So if we allow mistakes to happen, then the mistakes will continue to happen. We have to address them right away. So, let's see, what else do we need to cover here? Yes. The other thing is, so we have the whole time limit thing. So you spend whatever it says at the top of your sheet, working it up 10 minutes. In this case, this one would be for 15 minutes. So you do the time limit thing if you can. If you can. Now, if you feel, like it says here, if it feels like you have maxed out in less than 15 minutes, or the time limit, for this person it would be 15, for you it might be 10, whatever your time limit is. If you feel you maxed out, like you reached the speed, there's no way you're going to go any faster, and it's in less than that time limit, then you're going to decrease the metronome 10 or 20 beats per minute from whatever speed that was, and then start adding in the repetitions. So for example, let's say you're working on something and 250 is the beats per minute you're trying, and it's taking you like 1, 2, or even 3 minutes of really struggling to get that. Well, once you finally get it, that's it, you're done. So that's how I determine if it's a max speed for a specific thing you're working on. If it takes about 2 minutes of really struggling to get it, then when you finally do, that's it, you're done. And if it seems like after 3 or 4 minutes there's just no way you're going to get it, drop the metronome anyway. Continue to decrease the metronome until you reach a speed you're able to get another good take. We always have to end on good takes, okay? So we don't ever want to stop a practice session with a bad take, because that enforces mistakes. And again, we don't want that. So again, if you have like 2 minutes of really struggling, and it's just a fight to get that take solid, about 2 minutes of trying, you're done after that. You're done going higher in speed once you've reached that point. So if you reach a max speed in less than the time limit set for your practice time here, for whatever exercise you're doing, then you're going to decrease the metronome right away. Because if you reach a true max speed on something, there's no way you're going to get repetitions with that. So we're just going to jump to the lower speed right away and start working on adding in those repeats. So that's basically the gist of how we're going to go about practicing all this stuff. You're going to always start at, no matter how fast you get, if you got to 300 on something one day, we still got to go back down to 60 the next day and do it the right way. So I'm just picking a high number just to really drive the point home. So we always start at 60. We always go up in fives. All this stuff is very important, because we're training the ear to hear the metronome, hear the rhythm right, gain control over everything, focusing on accuracy. If you're working on something, or if I give you something, and I may tell you that if you hit a certain speed, send a video over early. So this way we can verify this, yes, you absolutely hit this target speed, and then we can move on a little bit earlier, where you don't have to wait for the next lesson. So I will let you know if that's ever the case. But yeah, for the most part, no matter how fast you get, always start at 60 the next day. Every practice session start at 60. Always go up in fives unless otherwise specified. Like this person's example here. This one, I actually advise starting at 50 and going up in 2 beat per minute increments. So if there's ever some kind of variation, I will let you know. But yeah, it's going to be pretty much the same for the most part, like 90% or more of the time. Start at 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, going up in fives, making sure you only increase the metronome if what you played was good enough to be on your album. Because remember, Perfect practice makes perfect. Yes, I'm repeating a lot of things here, but these are very important things that I want you to remember, because this stuff will help you really get the most out of your practice sessions. Okay? And I think that about covers it all. So please rewatch this as many times as you need to understand everything. Take down notes if you find that helpful. If you have any questions about what I talked about in this video, please let me know. But yeah, once again, thank you for signing up for lessons. Very glad to have you on. And anytime you got questions, let me know. All right, this video is done.